Good morning, everybody who is tuned in watching this today. I'm joined here with David Leech, who is a HR director, a very well-known HR director who has been in human resources since 1997. And his career has included not only human resources, but also retail banking, sales, and marketing for a range of businesses. And so I hope your extensive knowledge, David, will be able to help us young people to navigate our career today. So just going to pass it over to David.
Thank you, Asim. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second of the sessions on careers. I thought what would be useful to start off with would be to recap what I did last time very quickly, because it's kind of relevant, and we're going to be moving to something a bit more personal, if that's the right phrase, i.e. careers really about us as individuals. But what I talked about last time, the key things I thought were, first of all, the realization that despite the current health problems that we're having across the globe, we can now expect to live longer lives. So if you're, say, aged 18 now, it's been calculated that you've got a 50% chance of living to 100. And that has quite a big implication for your career and also for the kind of careers around you, because as people live longer, I think we'll be looking at a lot more investment in healthcare and in personal care. The other big thing that we need to think about is careers in the green world. And upon reflecting about my thinking on the last session, I realized we have a paradox in career terms in the green world, because greening up the world is about both preservation and shrinking. And when we think about careers generally, we talk about expansion and growth. And so careers in this area will be quite interesting. Will they necessarily be the kind of things where we'd acquire more status and more money? Or is it, in fact, a sign of success in careers about acquiring less? Anyway, that was just a question to think about. Then we also had a quick Q&A session where a number of interesting questions were asked. So number one, place and location. Will you have to move for work? My first answer was probably not. But actually then I reflect on the fact that we have lots of people who are leaving Africa and heading to Europe. And a lot of people still see moving, relocation, immigration as a thing to do to have a more productive career than where you started. A couple other questions about harm to your career that I tried to bat away. Does studying for a PhD cause you harm? And does having a career break to think about what you want to do cause you harm? And the answer to both of those questions was no. So anyway, that was a kind of summary of the issues last time. Let's just consider briefly what we're trying to achieve in all four of these sessions. When Henry inveigled me or flattered me into doing these sessions, I agreed as a good egomaniac, and then realized afterwards I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to achieve. So I really think about that. Essentially, I think there are four things I want to accomplish with these sessions. Firstly, I want to provide information. The world of careers is rich and full of stuff, and I want to try and help you navigate through that world. I also want to provide you with some know-how, things to think about and things to do to give you some ability to get the kind of career and the kind of job that you'll find satisfying. Thirdly, I want to provide warnings. When I set out on my own career, I was not really warned about what might go wrong, what might happen, what I might have to deal with. And as time goes on, I felt it would be really good to have been forewarned. Many of the bad things that happened to me, I might have run into anyway, but I'd probably be better dealing with them if I'd known they were coming. Finally, I wanted to provide encouragement. We're going through a lot of turbulent times at the moment, and it's easy to become, I think, discouraged. But I want people to feel that you are capable of having the kind of career that you might want, getting the kind of job that you might want, living the kind of life that you might want. And I'm going to try and achieve that amazing feat over 4 sessions, which this is the second. So let's just think about what I'm going to call. I did call another situation my health warning. It struck me when I was thinking about careers that a career guru, as I'm presenting myself as being today, will mainly be talking from his or her own standpoint and experience. So I have to confess that if you can't see me, and indeed, if you can, I am a white, middle-aged, Oxbridge-educated male. My career has been spent entirely in international corporate businesses, with the exception of a spell in the UK civil service, which is also a corporate body. I've had 15 specific roles in 10 organizations. So this session is, to some extent, informed by that background. Now, that's the kind of health warning, and I'm essentially from therefore quite a privileged class. But what I also would want you to think about is that in that time, I've gone through boom and bust, growth in businesses and downsizing, mergers and acquisitions. I was in London in the terrorist bombing just after the Olympics acquisition was announced in 2007. And I've also been managing the COVID crisis for my current employers. My roles, as Wasim has said, have included retail banking, sales, marketing, and human resources, and I've covered a fairly wide range of human resources. So, as I was implied, as a good egomaniac, I think I've got quite a few things to say. And having launched off my career at the age of 23 with Lloyds Bank, I realized I was thinking about this, that I've actually had to find a job on 6 separate occasions during my career. I've been interviewed for internal and external roles by employers and by headhunters over 100 times. If any of you get me at the end, I can tell you some hair-raising stories of bad interviews that I've given and bad interviews that I've had. But to start off with, one of my first warnings would be when you're being interviewed for a job, be careful what you say. I was once interviewed for a job with Dubai Ports, and the interviewer said to me, well, "Why do you want to work for a port organization?" And what I wanted to say was something about the romance of international trade, the fact that ports are gateways to the world for goods and services and so on. What I actually said was, it's because ports do nothing. I was rather nervous, I guess. And when he stopped laughing, we agreed that probably the job was not for me. So just choose your words carefully. Now, I'll just tell you what I want to cover in this session. First of all, we need to think about what you want in a career. That's quite an important piece of consideration at the outset. Secondly, we'll talk a bit about planning a career, to plan or not to plan. Then we'll talk about self-marketing, as I call it, building your profile with people. Then there's the inevitable discussion about your CV / resume. Then we'll think about who can help you. And finally, I want to talk to you about the selection process. There are lots of selection processes around. And the basic question that all employers want answered is, do we like you? Can you do the job? But to do that, they deploy lots of different techniques. And I interviewed one of my sons for this series of talks and asked him about his experience of being recruited. And it turned out to be very similar to mine. And the first job I got in my professional career was back in 1985, and he got his first job in 2018, and the experience is very, very similar. So we'll talk about that. So, firstly, what do you want in a career? Well, when people interview me, I kind of dodge the question. So I want something interesting. That's my answer. But it may be that you want to work in a particular industry or a particular profession. And it may well be that you don't really know what industry or what particular profession. And my advice to, I guess, is essentially at this stage is to go shopping. There's plenty of information around, and it's worth looking and seeing different organizations, different businesses, different, dare I say, different contexts, different professions. I interviewed somebody the other day for a job with a charity which I'm a trustee, and I asked her about how her career had been directed. And she said, well, it's all about my passion and my curiosity. Now, I think it's fantastic. If you can find something that excites your passion and curiosity, that's brilliant. And if you have the kind of initial skills for a career that excites passion and curiosity, that's great. Many people, I think, don't necessarily have an instant passion and curiosity for work. And I'm always slightly suspicious of people who tell me that they are making money from their hobby. Those who manage to find a hobby that turns into something lucrative, I'm a bit suspicious about, because I think it might take away the fun from a hobby. But it's certainly worth shopping around, I think. When I worked for an investment bank, Investec, there was a very keen credit and risk manager, Ian, and he was fanatically committed to his career in credit and risk. And I could never really believe that he would have woken up at the age of, say, 10 and said, I want to be in credit and risk. So when we're young, we think about the kind of jobs we might want to do, and the cliche of being wanting to be an engine driver, or I guess these days an airline pilot. But once you find your way into a job in an organization, you find there are things that are interesting that you never knew existed. I had no idea really much about human resources when I first got a job. And there are people now who have fantastic, satisfying careers in things like audit, quality, procurement, and so on. I cannot believe that any of them actually had a passion or curiosity when they first started looking for work. But above all, what you need it's not so much what you want in a career, it's what you need in a career. And what you need is employability. I think employability boils down to some formal qualifications, your personal skills, and your personal ability to get on with people. A theme of all my thinking over these 4 sessions have been about the ability to engage with people. You then need either experience, if you've got some, or you need some kind of potential. So you need to be able to demonstrate what you can do. And as someone who joined a bank in 1985, where the branch that I first started had exactly 1 computer, I'm perhaps a reluctant user of IT, but undoubtedly we all have now to become IT literate, and that's a key thing for employability. Now, to some extent, you've perhaps already chosen your career because you've made educational choices, but there are many jobs that many careers that don't require you to have a specific educational background, and therefore, I think in some to a large extent, there's a lot of places that you can look, a lot of places you can find work and find a career in. It can be a bit overwhelming, but let's just press on and, as I say, go window shopping. Now, the next thing I want to think about is career planning. Do you want to plan your career or not? I guess if you have the passion and curiosity and you have something that specifically attracts you, then the answer is a plan is a good idea. Indeed, I saw some research a little while ago that those who make what the researchers call strategic career moves, so might work in a job for 2 or 3 years and then move on, acquired greater status and income than those who were a bit more relaxed. Now, I was rather disappointed to hear that, because the implication was that status and income came from manipulating your career rather than being good. Another theme for me of careers in work is that you should do a good job, and that it's not appropriate really to think always about what your next step's going to be. And many employers value loyalty, and when I'm interviewing for future employees, I'm very suspicious of people who have, as it were, job hopped. And indeed, I'm very suspicious of people who tell me that every move they've made is entirely rational and thought through. A few years ago, I had the curious experience of interviewing the same candidate twice. I interviewed him once in 2005, and then I interviewed him later on in 2008. He had forgotten that he'd been interviewed by me in the meantime. And on both occasions, he presented what looked like a rather random career as a series of thought through steps. I couldn't quite believe him, so I didn't employ him. The other way to manage your career, obviously, is to be opportunistic and spontaneous. You just wait for opportunities to come along. And I, for one, always say yes when people phone me up about opportunities that they've matched me with. Headhunters and calls and so on, always good for the morale. And you might get something out of it. At least one of my jobs came from what seemed like a rather random call from a headhunter. But I suppose really in managing your career forward, it's about avoiding crisis management. So it's ensuring that if a crisis occurs, let's say your business goes bust, your organization is restructured, someone decides that you don't fit anymore, it's about making sure that you are able to be employed and that you're a credible employee and a credible candidate for vacancies. So I think thing one, and this is the thing you can do now, is to keep a track of your deeds and your development. This is not necessarily just about a CV. It's just literally a record, a journal, something that records what you've done and what you've accomplished. Equally, I'd say keep your eyes open to what's going on in the world outside. In my current role, I get a a fairly regular stream of human resources communications, the big publications who send me regular emails, and also slightly random journals that appear in my inbox. I read these quite a lot actually, so I understand what's going on. It's important to understand what jobs are available, but it's also important to understand what developments are happening in the industry that you've chosen. Now, there's one thing that I didn't put in the my initial preamble that I think you also have to think about. There's a point in people's careers where you are a good worker, people think you're good and effective, and then they decide they'd quite like to promote you to a position of leadership. A thing to consider when you're planning your career is whether you want to be a leader or whether you'd rather be an expert practitioner. Leadership is attractive, it's lucrative, it comes with status and a certain amount of power. It also comes with quite a lot of responsibility and, dare I say it, blame. People like you being a leader until you do something they don't like, at which point they decide that they've probably had enough of you. In work, you don't necessarily get voted out, although you do in politics. But a thing to consider is, do you want to lead people, or do you want to understand? Do you want to face the sacrifices, but also the pleasures that brings? So turning now to what I call self-marketing. How do you get known? How do people catch sight of you? What are your routes to market, if you like? Having talked about IT, I think the digital age has given us a lot of opportunity to get known. There's a guy who I'm connected with on LinkedIn who every single day posts something quite intelligent. Generally speaking, it's very interesting, but sometimes it's quite irritating. Nevertheless, I know who he is. His name is Sean McFeet, and he's the boss of a training business that I use. But all the time, and back to my theme about people, it's about getting yourself noticed. I've struggled when I last looked for work with selection systems where you get the name of a business, they've got a job available, and they put you straight onto an internet set of forms to be filled out, which you then send off and then hear nothing. So my strategy in getting my current role was to call people, to follow up on leads, and to try to connect with essentially recruiters and headhunters. And there's nothing wrong with spending time. I think if you can do it, meeting people face to face, if they will meet you, talking to them about themselves, finding out about them, leaving some kind of impression of yourself with the person you're buying coffee for. I interviewed another person for my charity not so long ago, and one of her strengths, she said to me, was, "I'm really good at networking." I said, "What does that mean?" She said, "Well, at the end of every conversation, I ask a new person for the names of the kind of people should carry on and talk to." I find this also slightly scary, because if doing that systematically means that you get to get lots of potential contacts, and you might become rather overwhelmed. You might be rather overwhelming. But actually, networking, getting yourself connected and visible, is a key thing. I also want to turn now to the what you might have heard of, the elevator pitch. The process by which you impress people with a pithy statement in brief. Now, I don't know if any of you have actually been in an elevator and have had to give an elevator pitch. I never have, but I decided I'd have a bit of a think about what my elevator pitch would be if I was today cornered by some big important person in a lift. And I've decided that what I would say would be, I change organizations through people. I change organizations through people. Now, you may feel philosophically or indeed linguistically that that's rather glib and doesn't necessarily say much, but it's enough for someone, I think, to be interested in what I might have to offer. So it's about keeping it brief and thinking about what you can say as a kind of initial advert or strapline or headline, enough that people are interested in you, but are not bored by you. So that's how you might self-market and deliver your elevator pitch. Then we have the core document for your career, your CV or your resume. I've got a small number of clear instructions here. Keep it brief. 2 pages for a resume, especially to get a long career, it's quite hard to achieve, but it's as well to not overstay your welcome in terms of the information you're giving. Secondly, keep it truthful. You will be found out if you embellish or exaggerate, and the truth really helps in these circumstances. I've often read statistics which show that something like 25% of all CVs contain a lie. I'm not sure whether that's the case or not, but it is as well to be truthful. That includes, by the way, being truthful about any gaps in your CV. Most gaps in the CVs are innocent and need to be talked about in positive terms. Thirdly, you really need to think about the actions, the effects, and the numbers that you want to put in your CV. So it's about what you did, what you accomplished, what the effects were, and if possible, the economic numbers. It might be about people, it might be about finance. And how do you wish to present yourself? Are you a doer or are you a changer? During my last job search, I submitted my CV to a kind of automated review process, which came back telling me that I came across a bit more like a plumber than I did as a transformer. So when I say I change organizations through people, my CV didn't say that. It said I just got lots of stuff done. So I changed the style. And remember, with your CV, it's really about the value that you can bring. It's not about how many qualifications you have or what you look like. I've seen CVs with people's pictures on. I've seen CVs with long lists of their publications. They're kind of impressive, but they don't really tell me very much about what you can bring and what you can do. So that's all about you acting on your own. There's a question in the world of careers about what you can do to get help. The first help I got was from my university, which frankly was a bit amateurish in those days, 40 years ago. But there is plenty of resources available now through schools and universities. But perhaps more importantly, it's good to find someone who can be a mentor or a coach, someone perhaps who's listening now, or someone who's a mentor at the Festival of Change. People's experience of finding work, dealing with career issues can be very valuable, can be very encouraging. And mentors and coaches, among other things, are just basically supportive people for you. It's a feel-good thing when someone tells you you've done a good job, made a good effort, you've got good skills. And searching for work and trying to manage your career can be quite a testing time. And having a person who's positively on your side is really good. So finally, I want to talk a bit about the selection processes that you might find yourself going through. It's increasingly online, and it can be frustrating, as I say, but a lot of jobs start with some kind of online test. And both of my two sons got starting their careers through this method. But before long, you end up having some kind of human interaction, a telephone call, an interview, or some kind of group exercise. I strongly suggest you try practicing these, getting someone to interview you or to sit in a group. You can sit with your friends and discuss things. It's all about learning how to be with people, to interact and to influence. Now, if we turn to the interview itself, I think it's quite important that you should think about how you come across. I've interviewed plenty of people who've given me the impression that their careers were devoid of problems, and I can't quite believe it. I think people often have problems to deal with. And what I suggest you do when you're or going for a job is think about something difficult that you did. Review your past for challenges overcome. I find it fascinating to talk to people who, for example, gone on Duke of Edinburgh style award expeditions and have had to sort out really serious difficulties for people. So shown some initiative and some skill to rescue people from difficult situations. And things you might have found easy, or if you involved some challenges, also worth thinking about because they impress people and they give us insight into what you can do. Once you've been through the interview and the assessment center and so on, if you're lucky, if it all goes well, you get the job. But it's a competition. It's important to seek feedback, I think, therefore, to work out how to come across well in the future. And I'll give you another kind of warning, piece of comfort. Getting picked, like getting picked in pickup games of football and so on, it's good to be picked, but it's a competitive world, and there are plenty of times when you won't get picked, and I just not take it personally. I remember the first time I was rejected for a job. It was really, really bad news, and I thought that the sky was falling in. I was a terrible person. I'd never get a job at all. Didn't take me long to get a job in the end, but rejection is just one of those things. And having been rejected quite a few times, I can tell you it really is just one of those things. And so that I think that really concludes the things I want to say today. It's a great journey looking for work and managing your career. I just want to wish everyone here who's listening good luck, and above all, keep learning. So that's the end of my talk. I'm going to turn to
Thank you,
questions. Wasima.
David, for that. That was really insightful. And as a recent graduate, that's been really helpful to me as well.
Oh, thank you.
If anyone has any questions, just pop it in the Q&A box and David can answer those for you. But I will start off with the questions. And I just want to ask you, what do you think is one key thing? There must be loads, but what's one thing that pops into your mind that's a key thing that employers look for in young people particularly?
Probably two things. It's a kind of fundamental potential, and that's about the ability to learn, but also to get things done. And the other thing is quite a boring thing, but what you might call stickability or commitment. When I joined my current employers, RWS, my team, and it carries on now, my team complained to me that they would recruit people who within 5 minutes would be looking for a promotion. And this is quite difficult because when you get the job, people want you to do the job. And even in hierarchical organizations, all of which are the kind of things that I've worked in, where upward movement is how you manage a career. Now you still need actually to do the work. So the ability to get the work done, to learn how to do it, and to do it effectively for a period of time, that's a key thing. Now, how do you demonstrate that in a CV or an application when you're relatively young? I think probably there are plenty of ways. I mean, for example, I talked about PhDs early on. Doing something that has involved a long piece of work, a long academic piece of work, demonstrates that commitment. Because you're probably being interviewed by someone who knows what doing a PhD or studying means, and that will give them some confidence that you have the ability to see things through. So there you go. That's my slightly boring answer.
No, that was good. Thank you. So, someone has asked, besides looking at website of company you're applying to for info, is a search on news items a good idea? Where else you can get details?
I think that's a brilliant question. It's a brilliant thing to do. I Yet again, I'm going to say I've interviewed too many people who said to me, "Well, I've been to your website." You ask the question, "Well, what do you know about my business?" And they say, "Well, I've been to your website and I found this." And you think, well, everyone's been to my website. Customers go to my website. So the news feeds, there are I can't remember the names now. There are various websites and sources of information which will tell you about, for example, the financial performance of a business, or you can go to, I suppose, the stock exchanges and see what the current performance is. You can find out, certainly from news feeds, what the new departure is. If you were to go to the RWS group website or to the stock exchange, you'll see that we have recently bought 3 companies, including we're about to buy a major competitor, which will move us from number 5 in the world to number 1. And I would be very interested if someone were to start quizzing me about that kind of issue. So there's a newsfeed is a really good idea. Acquiring some kind of knowledge of the organization that's interviewing you or interested in you is a really, really positive thing.
Okay. And another individual has asked, what are the best questions to ask at the end of an interview?
I guess I can't give a specific question. You need to show an interest which is genuine, I suppose is the answer. So I have been asked some very, very intricate questions from someone who wished to impress me by how incredibly intelligent they were. And it seems a bit naive, it's a bit irritating. And then you might have the other kind of question to avoid is how many holidays do you offer your employees? So a question about all the benefits probably isn't a good question to ask because it sort of implies something about what your candidate is looking for. So something that's genuinely interesting. So again, back to my my own employers, you might, for example, you might reasonably ask about our new acquisition. What are you hoping what the benefits will be? and you might need to kind of foreshadow that with showing some knowledge of what we've actually done. But you might well, it's a reasonable question to ask. There's change going on in your business. What are the benefits that you expect? And that would be quite an interesting question. That would be, and it would enable me to talk about that, and it would give the candidate some insight into the kind of organisation we were. Because I think the other thing goes on. The higher you go, the more it becomes like this. But getting a job is as a mutual engagement, and if you're getting information from an interviewer, you're helping yourself form an opinion as to whether you want to work for that business or not. And they also get interested in finding out what your interests and sort of and state of mind is. So that's sort of what I'll be looking for.
Okay. What do you think is like a good interview? Like, what are the key things a candidate shows during a good interview?
Well, I'm always impressed when people pause to think. So, you ask a straightforward question. Let's just go back to my point about something difficult. So, I might ask a question like, "Tell me about the most difficult group of people you ever had to influence," or "Tell me about your least favorite colleague." Or your favorite colleague, because what I'm looking for is both dealing with good things and dealing with less good things. And pausing to think about it always impresses me, because I don't need to be a script. I don't want a formulaic answer. Also, what I like is when people can be specific, and what I mean by specific is, can you give me the name of a person who you worked with, who you enjoyed working with? And when did you do this? What were the projects you worked on? And you can be specific about it. So if people say, well, oh, I forget, it was somebody called blah, blah, or it was in this organization that I can't quite remember. It was this project which wasn't all that memorable. That's not terribly good. And I don't, what I would like you to avoid is statements of principle. I once have a vivid memory back when I was working in Wales, interviewing a guy for a promotion. And I said, how do you... Tell me about a time when you successfully motivated a person to achieve a task. And his answer was, well, I believe motivation is a really important thing. And it's very important to motivate your people. And so he wasn't giving me any information about motivating anyone. He was just giving me a set of principles. So I changed the subject. I said, well, can you tell me about your proudest achievement? And he said, well, that's very important to be proud of your achievements. So he kept feeding back to me statements about my question, but he gave me no substance. So what I always want is a substance about what you can do. Now, equally, if you don't have an answer, if you can't answer it, don't try to tell me that you can't answer it. We'll move on to something else, because I'm not interested in what you've not got. I'm interested in what you've got.
Okay.
So that's it. So be specific if you can.
Someone has asked, if you haven't got the skills for a particular role, what steps can you take to acquire them?
Well, it kind of suppose depends on how deep the role is. I mean, I guess I made a comment about your educational past has to some extent conditioned your future. If you're interested in rocket science and you have no background in rocket science, it's going to be very difficult. But if you see a job opening that you want, it's going to be quite hard to get it straight away if you don't have the skills straight away. So I have to think about what do I want? What do I want to learn? Where can I find the training? But there's no instant answer to that one.
Okay.
But again, I guess if we're looking at sort of where people are interviewing graduates who are at the relatively early stage of their lives, what the employer is looking for is potential. So can you learn? And if I suppose the example would be I was offered a job by Price Waterhouse way back when I was looking for work to begin with, and they didn't offer it on the basis of any particular talent that I had, but on the potential that I could become an accountant. I mean, I didn't. I sort of basically fairly numerate, but the training was going to come from the employer. So there are plenty of jobs where the if you don't have the skills, that's fine, and if they interview you, they must think you have the potential. So I wouldn't be necessarily discouraged by that. But if it's further on, you've really got to kind of think about, doing some education or getting some direct training, and that would take some time before you return to an employer with a pitch for a job.
Okay. But if you were in an interview and you didn't have the skills that they were looking for, but you wanted to show that you had potential to actually sort of learn those skills quickly on the job, for example, how do you show that to an employer?
Well, I guess the employer's structured in those sort of circumstances. The employers structure the questions and the tests to reveal that. So I don't like psychometric tests, but they'll give you aptitude tests. What we do, for example, within RWS, we have a job which is called a linguistic reviser, which is essentially a person who checks the translations performed by the translators and make sure that they are accurate and understandable. And when we're recruiting for that job, we put you through a whole series of tests to find out whether you have that aptitude. Then we train you. You actually have up to 6 months training on how to do this particular job. So the employer's questions will lead you down that route that you can't necessarily guess what the question will be, but the employer just kind of does know what it's looking for, and the questions are there to find out what you can do. Sometimes interviews are positioned as being things to catch you out. I've been quite lucky. I've only had a couple of interviews in my life where the interviewer was clearly trying to catch you out and make you feel less good than you wanted to feel. But the process itself will reveal your potential. That's what it's designed for.
Okay. Fatima has asked, can you tell a little more about online networking, which has become the new norm, and what would be the best way to go about it?
Well, so I've been on LinkedIn, I think, for many years, and most of the time I've been ignoring it. What I've noticed is I've got a network on LinkedIn of something like 750 individuals. I've probably met about 50 of them. And one of the things that I think you need to do on LinkedIn, or if LinkedIn or any other social type of networking platform, is to engage in some kind of dialogue. So of these 750 people, so 700 I've never met, and they've just asked to be part of my network. So I sort of thought, well, fair enough. So I've become a bit random about it. Sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no. But nearly all of them have failed to follow up. And some others who have followed up just want to sell me something. So it's clear they're not that interested in me. So a key thing around this is to find someone who can have a dialogue with you, where you can exchange something interesting, and so you've got some kind of mutual, a thing in common. Another way, which just rather to my surprise was quite useful, is to write some posts or write an article. So I wrote an article which I called. In fact, if you're still there, you can go and find it. It's called 360-degree thoughtfulness. I was thinking that it's if you're in most jobs, people want you to do your job well, but when they want information from you, when they want to do something, you to do something for them, they don't necessarily care what the pressures are that you're under from other quarters. And when I'm doing the same, I don't necessarily care. And it struck me that we kind of upset each other by not necessarily thinking too hard about how busy we all are. So I wrote this article suggesting that we ought to try to think about some protocols or some routines or some cultural norms which are a bit more thoughtful, so the pressures of life are managed for you or with you by your colleagues. And I wrote this sort of this thing. I read it as a rant. It sounds rather soppy in its way, but I thought, I wonder if I can go viral. I'll call it 360-degree thoughtfulness. And it didn't exactly go viral. It did get something like 160 people read it, and I got a few comments and contacts that way. And so it's creating some interest, saying something that might be controversial or different. That's a way of getting yourself noticed. And I got a few. I've made a few other comments on other people's articles, which again spark commentary. Now, I haven't necessarily turned them into kind of networking opportunities, but when people speak, their opening is a kind of offer for contact, and that's how I might proceed. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you mind answering 2 more questions?
Sure.
Going 5 minutes over, is that okay? Or should I
Yep.
ask you it in the networking session?
No, we'll unfortunately I can't be at the workshop thing, so we can carry on till 9 if you want. But then I'll have to
You
go.
can't be at the workshop at 9?
No, I'm afraid not. So
Okay.
but we can carry on talking now.
Okay. So Thompson has asked why experience is being regarded, so maybe why is experience regarded as a powerful tool if you want to hire a symposium and expertise or an expertise with regards to his or her career, which is an added advantage to the excellent execution of jobs.
That's great. That's a great question. The really saying why do we look for experience? I guess the underlying thesis here is that past performance says something about future performance. I have seen research that says that that's potentially wrong. And indeed, obviously, in an early stage career where you haven't got a lot of past performance, a selection process is structured to find potential. I'll talk about potential a bit, and that's often a lot more about tests or live experiences, such as group exercises. So when I was first interviewed and recruited by Lloyds Bank, we went through interviews, aptitude tests, written tests where you had to produce a document, and finally a group exercise. And to my, well, not exactly my amazement, but in a way rather impressively, my second son, nearly 40 years later, had the same experience. So people are looking for some talents that lies within you that you have not yet had the opportunity to actually to use, and that's in its way it's quite commonplace. Whether I ever fulfilled the potential that's identified for me in 1985, I'm not sure. But then the question also sparks off to me the thought that there are plenty of organisations around who are looking for what you might call a bit more offbeat, not with offbeat, but a bit more creative skills, so innovation, for example, and they will not necessarily be applying the kind of conventional process of selection that I've described. So my own experience has been fairly conventional in terms of my career with big corporate bodies. But my first son got his first job by writing to or phoning up actually a particular business, and their HR department said to us, "Well, you write us a letter telling us what you can do for us, and we'll see." And he wrote the letter, and they then liked what he wrote, and they then interviewed him, and he got the job. So if I give the impression that experience is everything, it's a big thing, but accepting that you can't always have experience, employers that are often open-minded enough to look for other things. And as I said before, they structure their selection processes to give you the chance to show what your expertise is, what your potential is.
Okay, that's very interesting. Edna has asked, how can both employers and candidates deal with diversity in training/education area and work experience if someone is trained in one area while they have experience in another and want to get back?
That's quite a few questions in one there. I'm going to talk a bit about diversity in one of my later sessions. I think we're in an age of quite a lot of transition and difficulty. Dealing with diversity, I think what we're seeing in the broad world of recruitment is a recognition that job adverts need to have language that is inclusive. Then you look at CVs and resumes, and nowadays many organizations are taking names off CVs so that you can't identify people's ethnicity by their name, and they're giving more training to recruiters and to managers and to staff in general to help them avoid bias. But but progress is slow, and that's in fact one of the things I should be saying. Are we successfully avoiding issues around diversity? I don't think we are, but what I say, we're beginning to, but it's quite a difficult area because as I say, I'm a white middle class middle-aged guy born in 1961 into a society which was considerably more biased against women, black people, disabled than it is now. But that bias hasn't gone away. But things have got better. I think they're going to carry on getting better. But there's no magic bullet here. And it's an issue that afflicts my organisation. We have 8% BAME employees, and I'm in the process now running a project to see how we can improve that. On the other hand, we have 75% female workforce and a high proportion of female managers. So it depends on which kind of category you're looking at. We could point to some successes, but also some failures. But it's a long march, and it continues to be, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think I dealt with the first part of the question. I can't remember the second part now.
The second part was, if someone is trained in one area while they have experience in another and want to get back, so how can they deal with diversity in training education with work experience? And if they're trained in one area, while they have experience in another and want to get back?
So it's about career swapping between one specialism and another, essentially. I think it's about, if you're within an organisation, I suppose it's about working with the management to get back to where you want to go. If you're looking at moving organisations, it's again maybe accounting for your motivations. If people sort of going down one route and they decide they don't want to go down that route after all, going back to another, what you possibly have to do is take a step back in terms of status and money. But it's about being open about what your motivations and intentions are, because employers want ultimately to trust your motivations, and that means being open. And then when you get if you return to a kind of role that you might have done before, the kind of skills that you've been trained to do, it's kind of doing a good job. I mean, it's no one sort of objects to people doing a good job.
Okay, and lastly, I'm just going to ask Fatima if you want to come on the stage and ask David any questions, and you can use this also as a networking opportunity. So I've just allowed you to come on the stage. So if you want to, Fatima, just turn on your camera and mic.
So this is not the best opportunity. I just want to say thank you. I really liked that.
Thank you.
I did this fellowship, which was personal training, and through the 3 months, I learned these things. But it's been a year back, and now you're telling the same things, and you're telling them in a much more. It's not like a fellowship, but you're telling out of your real experience. So it's really settling in and gelling in with my own experience. Since I'm a fresh graduate and I'm about and this is really important not to take it personally and just keep trying. And the interview trips were really good, to be thoughtful. I thought that taking a moment to think might just go wrong, that they think you're slow, but since it impresses you, I think I can always take a moment to think if I need to answer something. Thanks a lot. That's all.
Thank you. Actually, Fatima, before you go, she's gone now. I'm just wondering. For me, it's been a very kind of eye-opening experience because of the number of places that people have been listening in from. The first I did was Beirut, Turin, and Amsterdam. Fatima, and then of course I asked Wasima where she was, thinking she might be in Dubai or somewhere, only to find that she's in London.
Yeah.
So Fatih, where are you phoning in from or listening in from?
I'm from Lahore, Pakistan.
Lahore, great.
Yeah.
You see, now I can claim to have been to all these places.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really nice that this is so global and we're all able to relate.
Yeah.
I'm really thankful for this platform, really.
Oh, that's great to hear,
Lovely.
Fatima.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So I guess Wasim, I've got time for one more question.
If anyone wants to ask one more question before David is off, just feel free to put it in the box.
I've got a question if David can answer. Just occurred to me. Since I think I do have a lot of volunteer experience, but a lot of it is done like these are like small passion that I did on my own. None of them are really related to any organization a lot. They're just some things I did at home or online or with friends, like a community library or a summer camp. They're not official stuff. So I don't know how to sort of, but I feel like they did add a lot to my exposure and experience. So I don't know how to just sort of put it in my resume. How do I put it in the volunteer part, or it feels like the resume gets really long with all the volunteer stuff.
What you're saying is that these are things that you've done, but there isn't an organization or a charity or something like that that's kind of employed you. You've just done this stuff spontaneously.
Yeah.
I suppose you say it gets long. I think a subheading of your resume that says voluntary work, and then the things that you've thought have gone particularly well. As I say, in a way, what's really great here is that you've done this spontaneously. So again, an employer would love the fact that you've got yourself, you've shifted for yourself. You haven't waited for something to happen. You've done something spontaneous, almost entrepreneurial. And so I'd probably think about the top, let's say, the top 2 or 3 things that you thought you did that made a difference, and the effect of what that difference was. So it's a community library. I mean, that's I guess that implies to me something that was not there before that is there now. That's the creation of something like that is again a thing that as an employer we'd love to hear. So but I guess keep it brief and be clear what the effect was. And again, about the creation of a community library, fantastic.
Okay, great. Thank you.
What I've done for the workshop. I'm sorry I can't attend the workshop today, but I've got a couple of questions, topics that you might want to think about. I talked in my presentation about leadership, and the simple question I kind of want to ask people, and it's sometimes difficult. It's kind of, do you want to be at the top? Do you want to be a skilled practitioner, or do you want to be a leader? Now, the reason I ask this is because, as I said in the talk, the leadership has many benefits, but has many challenges, and you don't always feel like when things are challenging that being a leader was what you were cut out for. I've certainly been through that thought, and I remember my daughter asking me one day why her brothers often ended up being captain of this or head of that, and I said it's because they are ready to do it, they're willing to do it. And I said, but people sometimes blame you if they don't go right. And she said to me, "Oh, I don't really fancy that, Dad." But something was in her already, because she then subsequently applied to be head girl of her school and became head girl of her school. And I asked her at the end of being head girl at the end of her year, I said to her, "What did you learn from your year as head girl?" She said, "People are not as nice as they pretend to be." And that actually encapsulates some of the problems of being a leader. So I suggest a workshop topic would be, so just think about being a leader. Do you want to be a leader? What kind of preparations do I have to make about it? Or would you prefer to be someone who just does a great job? So that's one thought. And the other one that I've put here is balancing patience with ambition. So back to the point I made about once you get the job, you've got to do it. How long would you be prepared to do a job for before you thought you were ready to move on? Got a couple of questions. So I do apologise for not being able to be in the the workshop. I've got another one this evening, and where I will be in the workshop. So if anyone wants to turn up, then happy to see you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, David, for your talk today. For me especially, it's been very, very helpful. And I'm sure to many others who are listening in and those who are going to watch this later, I'm definitely sure that they're going to take some gems from this. So thank you very much.
Great.
And
okay, well, thank you very much. It's been fun.
Yeah, we'll end it here. Thanks a lot, David.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, bye.
Bye.